Episode 11, Fireside Chat with David Spinrad, the Rated Rabbi, Part 1. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time you're listening to this. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Like I say when I stream, you could be anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with me. And so I appreciate that so much. But then again, with a podcast, you can take this wherever you go, which is why I love the format over video. And that brings me to my guest for this episode. This will be episode 11, and the next one will be episode 12. I mean, that's I think how numbers work, right? And okay. I forgot about the intro. Okay, this is the Card Diary with Hobbyist Thompson. I'm your host, Any Cards, and I am recording this intro after having two guest recordings via StreamYard, back-to-back nights. And so this is a little bit of a back to the future, for at least it is for me, because I'm recording this intro after recording with my best card friend, David Spinrad, the Rated Rabbi, who is very much a real rabbi. And we recorded that on June 19th, which is also Juneteenth, and it was just so much fun. Then the very next day, I guess that's tonight, I recorded with Jason Hickey, who pulled a LeBron James triple logo man with backyard breaks, and he was also on the show, the Netflix show King of Collectibles. He was such an awesome guest, and we had so much fun talking about the card, why he buys into breaks, what makes her a good breaker, the Netflix show. Of course, we got to talk about his childhood and nostalgia, because that's just what I do on this podcast, and it was just so awesome. But back to the Rated Rabbi, and he does have a video format podcast. So there's audio, and then there's the YouTube channel. And I'll put those in the show notes because, I want to give shine to my fellow podcaster and content creator and such a good friend in and out of the hobby. And yet, I got to say this, like this podcast that you're listening to, it's not for everyone. Okay. You've heard me talk about the soup being too hot, too cold, and just right. And I say that with love because his podcast that centers around the 1984 All-Star game for baseball, Major League Baseball, and he attended that game with his father. I was 2 years old, but that was at Candlestick Park, which is in the Bay Area, and that's where the San Francisco Giants played. And he's a huge Giants, 49ers, Golden State Warriors fan. And so if you didn't grow up in that era in the early 80s, or if you have no interest, I mean, because you can be older, I mean younger, um, but if you have no interest in learning about the history of that era, if you're not interested in baseball, I mean, you might not like it. But if you do, and you are, say, like a vintage collector, or you are in your 40s and 50s, which I think a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are, you might love it because it is just so unlike other podcasts out there. And that's the thing, and that's why we're such good friends. Dave is hard not to like, and that's why even though he and I are in very different collecting lanes, he's more vintage baseball and I'm more 90s basketball. We have a deep mutual respect for each other, and we love the hobby and are continuously learning and sharing with each other. We go to shows together. We will be going to national together, which we talk about in our chat. We don't do a lot of transactions though, although I should probably post on Instagram a sweet card that I bought from him recently. But the reason we don't is really from my end of things. But one, we collect in different lanes. But two, I do find it hard to transact with friends, the dollars and cents of it all. I'd much rather trade with friends, I think, because when I start putting my business hat on, I do find myself becoming a different person, and I am trying to grapple with the many hats I wear, which is the whole premise of this podcast. So I'm gonna cut the intro here for now and keep it short because we, these chat interviews, these chat monologue. Oh my gosh, what am I trying to say? The chat episodes are they tend to run long. So for the beginning of the next episode, part two, I'm going to pick up on this idea of the many hats we wear, time, and hobby time, and the direction of this podcast. So, without further ado, my chat with David Spinrad. the Rated Rabbi. Okay, I think we're recording now. Welcome to what I think is going to be episode 12 of the Card Diary with Hobby S. Thompson. I am your host, Denny Cards. You can find me on Instagram at Denny_cards. And the podcast account is Hobby S. Thompson. And tonight, we're recording this actually on June 19th. And I am here with someone who I talk to on a very regular basis, but folks might not know too well, like perhaps some of my earlier guests. He actually did the thing that no one else did, which was give me a bio. And he gave me his professional bio, his card bio, and I think we're just going to it's wild, but I'm just going to eschew the bio, even the questions in the beginning. I'm just going to introduce you with no notes. This is the least prepared I've been for any guest because you and I talk so often. I just want this to kind of be like a chat where you're walking your dog, I'm walking my dog. It's like a Tuesday morning, and we were just kind of like talking about the hobby. All right. So I will briefly introduce you, and then let's just get right into it. All right. Dave or David Spinrad is the Rated Rabbi or Rated Rabbi on Instagram? I'm sorry.
Rated Rabbi.
Yes, and I sent the show prep notes to the wrong email address because I thought it was Rated Rabbi. But at theratedrabbi@gmail.com is can I even say that as your email address? Okay. And actually, I have a email address for people who don't have Instagram. If you want to reach me, you can reach me at hobbysthompson@gmail.com. Also, dennycards23@gmail.com. I feel like I don't really say that because I always forget. But Dave Spinrad, Rated Rabbi, an actual real rabbi in the hobby, has the logo of the Rated Rookie, but replacing Rookie with Rabbi. He is the person who got me back into the hobby. We're neighbors. We live in the same area in Northern Virginia, in the DC metro area. We've been to shows together. He really got into the hobby earlier than I did. And my wife thanks you so much for sucking me back into this crazy wild hobby.
I can't take any credit or blame.
Yeah, but you're my best card friend. Let me just say that straight up.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
I've learned so much from you, and I can't wait to get into it to see how the listenership of this podcast can learn from you. So I'm really not very well prepared because I just want this to be a chat between us. So
sure.
So why don't you go now?
Well, thank you, Dennis. It's good to be here. I'm Rabbi David Spinrad.
Hobby or Denny?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Denny.
Yeah.
I'm just really happy to be here. It's kind of like our walks, here to talk a little bit of cards, here to talk a little bit, I think, card philosophy, approaching how we approach collecting. I think there's a spiritual component to card collecting that is just makes this a really, really wonderful endeavor. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So we just had Father's Day yesterday. So I wanted to kind of talk about two things real quick before we get into cards. One, our dogs, our wonderful dogs. And then two, how your Father's Day was. So do you want to share with folks who the breed or age? Like tell us about your dog a little bit, please.
Oh, well, my dog is an absolute mutt. She's got 8 breeds, all of them love. She's I don't know, like 45 pounds. Her name is Callie. She's partially trained, partially untrainable. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I love that dog. She's also the wonderful, wonderful vehicle for me getting out of the house and listening to a lot of hobby podcasts. To be honest, just like calling my wife and say, "Didn't you just walk the dog?" I'm like, yeah, but that was this morning. Now it's the afternoon. So part of the way I listen to podcasts is walking that dog around the neighborhood, walking past your place.
Absolutely. So my dog, you know her very well. Her name is Pepper, and she is half Pekingese, quarter poodle, quarter Chihuahua, 10 pounds dripping wet. Everyone thinks she is a puppy. I mean, she's like almost 3, I guess now, which is past puppy age, but everyone's like, "Oh, so cute." Is when's it gonna get full grown? And I'm like, this is the fullest, biggest she'll ever get in her life. Pandemic puppy, got her when she was like 3 months old, like I guess almost 3 years now. And I would say in the beginning it was really hard for us to walk our dogs. Right, they were just so
Mhm.
excited and they just wanted to like nip at each other. But now they're pretty good. They
They
actually
get
let us now talk during our walks.
That's true. How was your
Right.
Father's Day?
Yeah. Thank you. Um, I had a you know what, I gotta say this. It's wild how I forget where I read this, but the gift to mothers on Mother's Day is the dad takes them away and she gets a little bit time to herself. And then Father's Day, it's like the complete opposite. It's like you the dads spend more time with their kids. And it's such a interesting way to look at it. Like, wow, that's is the actual way of thinking about it, like, oh, dads don't spend a lot of time with their kids. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if people's mileage may vary on that, but had a really good Father's Day. um, I will very much admit it's almost perfect timing having this discussion because like my back hurts because I was playing basketball with my son. We washed the cars together and I felt like my back was wrenching. I'm a man, I'm 40 now, and yet got to grill some burgers, had
Nice.
some ribs today, and so we had a really good Father's Day extended weekend.
Nice.
So how about you? How was your Father's Day?
Pretty uneventful actually compared to yours, but very happy just to chill on the porch, do a little reading, spend time with family, went swimming in the afternoon, and
Mm,
that was it. Super, super, super low key. I set a goal this year. I haven't been eating any sweets, haven't
mm.
had any, cookies or cake or candy or ice cream. And I love all that stuff. And it's this New Year's Eve and I haven't had any. And it really cuts down on sort of the celebratory aspect of Father's Day, birthdays, but nevertheless, it was really nice. And, you know.
I love it.
So can I ask you
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I listened to I got maybe like 25 minutes into the one you did after streaming and
Mm,
after breaking, I mean, the other
yeah,
night. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was a case of hobby select football, right?
yes,
Yeah. And I love the metaphor of a party.
yeah. Thank you.
I thought that was terrific. And that when you get like it's sort of like the party host, you're sort of the party DJ keeping the party going. And I was thinking about like, God, most cards are nothing, right? And then it's just going and going. You got some nice ones. Got some nice cards out of there. You got some nice pulls. Did you have
I was
fun?
Oh my gosh, it's a blast. I was able to make a little bit of content out of it, and
Uh-huh.
I think that, well, first of all, I'll have to pay you in cards later next time we walk our dogs. But
There's only a few cards I want, man. I don't know
I know, right? That's
unless
true.
it's that Kobe refractor. I'm
We're
out.
we're gonna talk about we are going to talk about so much about how we have such different lanes, and yet
So different. Yeah.
we can have
Yeah.
such
Yeah.
deep,
Yeah.
meaningful discussions about the hobby.
Yeah.
So I will say I have no attachment to the ultramodern, especially football cards. It's almost like I'm able to, I'll do the research, I'll go to Cardboard Connection, I'll look up everything.
Mhm.
It truly is astounding as to how many one of ones there are in this product, which you and I've talked about a lot about,
Insane.
just the number of one-on-ones. But to pull a one-on-one was awesome. I just now I know why these breakers scream, because it's so exciting. It's like, I've said this, I can't remember if I said it in the podcast, but it's like playing poker. There's so many moments of somewhat of a like boredom, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
try to keep the energy going and the room going, but you're ripping and there's a lot of bass and a lot of like nothing. And then when you hit something great, when you hit pocket aces, when you hit pocket kings, you're just you perk up and you just at the poker table you don't want to yell out, "I got pocket
Yeah.
aces." That'd be the
Yeah.
worst
Yeah.
poker player in the world. But in the streaming, when you're breaking, you're just like, whoa, like here's something new and different, and here's a card that's worth several $1,000s, depending on what people want to pay for it. But I had a blast. I mean, it was really exhausting. I mean, 17 hours, one 9-hour session and one 8-hour session. I really was only able to do that because it is a 3-day weekend, and it was
Yeah.
Father's Day
Yeah.
weekend. But yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
yeah,
for asking.
oh yeah, yeah. It blows me away that I mean, it's a nice mid-tier product, right? I'd say it's like
Mhm.
a step below Prism. It's kind of in that select, a little bit above Mosaic, kind of like,
Mhm.
right in that spot. Um, I always have like lots of color. It's got tons of different, inserts. But it blows me away that a card, when it has a sticker auto and
Yeah.
a player worn patch
Not
that
even,
can be worth
yeah.
thousands of dollars. Like,
Right.
man, if I had that card worth thousands of dollars, I would be selling as fast as I could.
Mhm.
I wouldn't hold it for a minute. I have no faith in that. They're cool to look at, but how does that happen?
I didn't even make content about this yet, or maybe I did and I'm forgetting, but that card actually sold in the middle of the stream. My co-streamer, he was hammering the phone lines and trying to get the deal for the buyer who he was talking to as well. So he was kind of like middlemaning the deal, and it actually sold within not within minutes, but before the stream ended. So maybe in
Wow.
like an hour's time with a lot of texting and phone calls and all of this.
Wow.
The person who won the card will have
Yeah.
never physically have touched a card.
No. Are you at liberty to say what he paid for it, the buyer?
I, you know, I am. It's a gray area. I don't think I was explicitly told not to, but because I know this person wants to, is likely going to want to sell it immediately as well.
Sure.
Much like anyone who does, like, a deal with me, if I don't have the
Yeah, yeah,
explicit
yeah.
consent, I just
For
kind of
sure.
want to like respect their potentiality of not of making a profit.
No, totally. When I
So
sell something on Facebook, I write sold and I take down the price.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
in a vintage group or something. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, did you pay to see the cards in my hand kind of thing? No,
exactly.
you don't get to see it. So I definitely like, let's talk gambling and sports cards for a minute, can we?
Let's do it. Yes,
Yeah.
turn the
Yeah.
tables. You are now the captain now.
You're my buddy. We're just talking.
I know.
So,
Yes,
I mean,
fireside chat. Let's
yeah.
chat.
So, like, I think one of the things you and I have talked about is that both of our cultural backgrounds love a game of chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've
Mm-hmm.
definitely shared that, Korean culture, Jewish culture,
Mm-hmm.
like it's just like it's a part of the culture and it's super fun. Tend to be like thinking persons. It's not like abject, like scratchy lottery tickets. It's you have to like they take some skill,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Um, in my family, like other families went to Lake Tahoe and like went skiing around the
Yeah.
lake. We went to Harrah's, and my parents would be at the tables, and they give my brother and they give me rolls of quarters, and that was for sure my childhood. They taught us how to walk across the casino floor, kind of scanning the floor for drop chips. So when I for sure. So but when I see breaking, my thought is like, oh, this is gambling, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a game, which is super fun. But let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about that. What are your thoughts?
Before we talk about that, which I would love to, I
Yeah,
that
yeah.
opens the door for me to want to kind of share a little bit. Well, before I do that, which Harrah's? Like you grew up, I didn't really do a buy it for you. You grew up in the San Francisco area, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, from San Francisco. I'm thinking the Harris in Tahoe, but we spent plenty of
Tahoe,
Harris time in Reno as well. Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah,
So I grew up in the East Coast. So I've mentioned in the podcast how I grew up in New York City as a kid. So we have definitely been to Atlantic City. I mean, I remember being, of not of gambling age, 12 or 13, and we would drive out there, and at a certain point, you can't go past certain casino. You need
sure.
ID.
Yeah.
So I remember like there being some rinky-dink roller coaster thing. I remember the money that was won. Again, this was like in the early 90s, but it was like JFK 50-cent coins,
Oh
the
yeah,
half
$half,
dollars.
sure.
So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
how
yeah,
they would
yeah.
pay it out. So that's just, again, I had no clue we were going to talk about this, but that immediately came to my mind as a thing that stuck from my memory of from my childhood. But I'm not a coin collector. I'm a card collector.
That's right.
So
That's right.
so Harris for you, Atlantic City. For
Yeah.
me, gambling culture. What was the question again? Like, let's talk about just gambling
Let's
in
talk about
general.
yeah, no, 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 just the gambling as it relates to breaking.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great way, a healthy way to look at it.
right.
Uh,
So I don't get into breaks myself anymore. I will say
mm,
that. I used to, and not
mhm.
heavily, and not high end product, just like really like low end stuff. And it is a gamble. But I think what breaking does allow you to do, and I actually was going to talk about this in a future episode, but let's talk about it now, is it does allow you to get into some products that you may not otherwise, or like you don't want to, personal do a Persia or a dome, which is another term for the newer folks here, who to do their own hobby box, because
Mhm.
hobby boxes have gotten so expensive. Panini has done the Dutch auction, and really has tried to maximize its profit. So when it comes to breaking, let's say I'm we're in the DC metro area. If I'm a Wizards fan and
Yeah.
my son loves the Boston Celtics, maybe get into a break for just the Celtics and the Wizards. And so could you get skunked, which means you get nothing? Yeah, very well possible. But there is a gambling element. And I remember in my like New Year's post about appreciating or resolutions saying
Mhm.
something about how breakers who we have an ecosystem. It's a very delicate ecosystem, and breakers, their contribution to it is they get wax broken and they bring cards into the market.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a benefit to that. And I
Yeah,
think, and
definitely.
I've said this many times, and I'll say it, this is not the last time I'll say it, is good breakers are good for the hobby and bad breakers are bad for the hobby. And when I decided to do breaking, it really was doing this hobby S Thompson, try it out, see what it's like on the other end, see how the other side lives. But also, I realized if people are going to break, or if people are going to get into breaks, I'd rather it be with me, because I know my ethical code and my moral standards and
Yeah.
my shipping speed. Will I be the best salesman? Will I be the best this or that? No, but when it comes to providing a breaking service, I just wanted to give it a shot. So the reason I say all of that is because I definitely have had qualms. I mean, you and I have had so many discussions about, well, why do you do this or all that, but it's like it's fun. I'm doing some
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's a good
Yeah.
reason. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I am in a way the blackjack dealer at the casino, I guess, or like I'm like, hey, you want to come to my table and put some money down and have fun and chat. I mean, that's the one of my favorite things about breaking is you just get to chat with the people in the room, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I love active rooms where people are talking all the time. When if it's like people just want value and money, I mean that's kind of what it's about. But I do like getting to know people, and so
Yeah.
it's not just a transactional gambling. There's a huge gambling element to it, though, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
But what?
gambling is social too. Like when you go to a club, it's super
Yeah,
social. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
best gambling experiences that I've had earlier when I used to be more into poker table. You're chatting people up on the table.
Mhm.
Uh, like
Always.
I'm not a big slots person, but like
Ugh,
craps, everyone
craps.
is like
Super
yelling.
social, man. Ah,
Everyone's Yeah, everyone's
I'm
on
a
the
di
same team. Like
I'm a
they're
dice
all
man too.
you're
That's
there you
if
go.
I'm gonna play a table game, craps is the most fun.
It's
I
so
hardly
much
play any
fun.
table games anymore, though. If I bet anything now, it's probably just like a game, do a little sports betting.
Mm.
I love the action. I feel like if I bet a game, I get so much like I get an entire game for my dollar. Um, yeah.
Again, none. I didn't think we were going to be talking about this, but let's
I
do it.
know.
I think his name is either Mark or Mike Mahan, but he's actually like the. Everyone thinks Michael Rubin is like the number one guy in Fanatics, which he is. He's the CEO. But when it comes to the Fanatics collectibles and the card, the collectibles, the sports card aspect of Fanatics, I
Mhm.
think it's Mr. Mahan, and he recently was on some sort of panel where he said, we want to bring the sports, the sports fan and turn them into a collector and turn them into a bettor. And I was that it made me. I had to think about it and I had to process it because I'm like, collecting is already a gamble, but then do we want everyone to turn into a bettor?
Hey
I don't
man,
know.
you know how I feel when they talk about 10x in the hobby. I don't think they're talking about 10xing the participants in the hobby.
The money.
Yeah, 10x the dollar. That's fine. They're entrepreneurs. They're business people. But I don't think there's any. I want to 10x it so the little kids can do it. It's not that. It's a business. It's all good though.
As
You know.
what is it, Rosie Perez in White Man Can't Jump? You're an entrepreneur, or
I love
maybe it's a different song. Maybe different.
White
I don't
man
know.
can't jump. I love
Is
it.
it? I don't know. Maybe it is. Well, quiche. I definitely remember her talking about quiche.
Um,
What is quiche? Rosie Perez, man.
all right, next
Um,
next question. I,
Next, yeah, go ahead. You go
no,
ahead.
so I want to talk about like right now, if you were gonna climb a Mount Grail more, like if you were gonna climb a mountain and get a Grail. First of all, what's it?
Mm,
What is a Grail to you? And like, is
oh
there a
gosh.
dollar on a Grail? And then if there is, what's your Grail? You don't have to talk numbers, but is there a card out there that is just like, once I have it, I never let it go kind of card?
Um, I mean, I think you and I have talked a lot about my pursuit of the Scoring King, which is not even in a great grade. It's a
I
PSA
thought
7,
you
but it
got
makes
it.
me
You
still.
got it
Yeah, I
though,
do
right?
have it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No, what I'm
yeah.
saying is, if I had one singular card that I was like, I would need this back to fill a hole in my childhood, it's that card because I gave it away to someone who was trying to manipulate me to like befriend them, and or maybe they didn't manipulate me. Maybe it was just me, manipulating myself. I don't know, but I ended up giving that card away, and that person was not my friend anymore. But it felt like I felt like I needed to fill that void, and I did.
Mm.
Um, do I have any other grails? I mean, I think you and I have definitely talked about my want list for Natty, which, by the way, side note, we are going to National, and I am going to be sharing a Airbnb with you. And
Mm-hmm.
P. Ryan is so angry at us right now because we are actually going to be roommates in Natty. Apparently, if you can't afford, for those of you who are unaware,
Oh,
a very prominent voice in the hobby said, if you cannot afford your own room at National, you shouldn't go, which caused a lot of people to have thoughts about why this person is telling them how they should spend their time and money. But so I say it in tongue in cheek. But yes, we're going to National, separate flights, but we're going to be splitting an Airbnb. But yeah, I've shared with you my natty list. It's 5 cards.
let's hear
Mostly.
it.
All right. Oh gosh. I don't want to like take too long on it because I don't want to like talk too much about
All
specific
right,
cards, but I'll do
give
it.
me. How about one? How about just one?
Jeremy Lin, Knicks uniform autograph. It would be
You
great to
hear
get an
that,
art. Yeah,
car people? Let's get this
card.
guy going.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be so hard to do.
It
Come on,
no, I know. I have some eBay
Knicks
searches.
uni
So
auto.
here's the thing, right? We all know rookie cards are the most sought after and most expensive. Could I get a Warriors RPA Jeremy Lin? Sure, I could do that. That Linsanity run again with like
It's
representation
crazy.
mattering. I was
Totally.
at. I mean, I'll go ahead and share it now. I haven't
Yeah.
shared it with much. I don't even know if you heard the story, but during that Linsanity run, he did come through Washington D.C. and I went to that game, and I was like literally in the last row of the 400s level, so like super ultra nosebleed. I was on row P of
Yeah, but you were
432,
there, baby.
but I was there, and let me tell you, Dave and listeners, it was the loudest I have heard. Maybe at that point it was Verizon Center, or now it's Capital One Arena, but it was straight up. I remember going to like 1 or 2 Wizards playoff games when I think John Wall hit a game winner against maybe the Hawks. But I gotta say, Linsanity was louder. It was the loudest. It felt like because I went to University of Florida for
Yeah.
undergrad. It felt like it was like a Gainesville, Florida football game. How loud it was. That arena was electric for that night, and of
Yeah,
course, he did
yeah.
well. But Jeremy Lin, Knicks auto on card. I've seen ones where he's on the Nets. I've seen the Warriors ones. I've seen the Rockets ones, but it's a Knicks Jeremy Lin on card auto. Would be pretty cool.
Have you gone to TCDB to figure out which set and year and all that?
Great resource for those of you who are listening. TCDB.com, right? That's tradingcarddatabase.com.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have not. I've done it for other things. Like I'm trying to figure out writing an article about Upper Deck Artifacts, 2007, 2008. I do Cardboard Connection for a lot of the more modern stuff. But to answer your question, I have not gone into TCDB to look for like which years or which sets I would have to look for. But
It's super fun to figure out a
yeah,
set and figure out the card you're looking for. It's a
yeah.
great resource. Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
let me
All
ask
right.
you, like, because we would do
Yeah.
this on our
What's up?
walk. What's your number one or top 3 wants from Natty?
Yeah. Number one is I am looking for my 52 Tops Willie Mays.
Mhm.
I've been on that one now. I got the 51 Bowman his rookie last August. So since then, I've been looking for the right example. And it's been a journey, but I'm really clear about exactly the card condition, exactly the kind of example I want. So it takes a lot of patience. I've definitely got the money saved up, and I've got that, put aside from my other card money. So I know that I've got the money for it, and I'm super excited to find it. And I'm also patient. I think that's probably the thing I've learned. I look at some of the cards when I first started collecting, and I'm mostly a vintage guy, and there's so much to learn about collecting vintage, right? Because it's not about the grade. I think, in fact, actually, that was one of the beginner mistakes I really made. And I was looking at grades, maybe first or maybe second, right? The
Mhm.
first card catch my attention. Oh, that's remember a 71 Clemente, which is such a beautiful card.
Mm.
I got in a PSA 8 at Chantilly the first time I went, and I knew I wanted that card. And that would have been like August of 2021.
Mhm.
And since then, I've traded down from an 8 to a 7, and a 7 to a 6. And
Mm.
I love the 6 better than either the 7 or the 8. Just beautiful, bright color, perfectly centered. 71 Tops is a black border, so any kind of edging or corner where it just really stands out. But the eye doesn't linger on the corners. Your eye draws to
Yeah.
the center. The frame
Yeah.
is more important. So I'm looking for that perfect example maze, and I don't care what grade it's in, as long as it's a beautiful card. Uh, that kind of approach, though, is not really uncommon in vintage. People who want the
Mhm.
most card for um, what ultimately is the lowest grade. Uh, so that's the number one card I'm looking for. I'm working on a Willie Mays run,
Mhm.
and I'm getting there. Um, Slowly but surely, there's a lot of Willie Mays cards. I'm just doing main issues, and then so base cards and a few of his combo cards that are pretty cool as all-star cards. And then I've also have I've been collecting those 2020 Obsidian Supernovas now for 2+ years,
I
and
know.
I got to be the only person working on that insert set, right? I'm looking. It's 2020 Obsidian football. Um, Supernovas, die cut. They look like little like Art Deco
Mhm.
statues. They're so beautiful. I have 18 out of 20 in the set. Of the 18, 8 one of ones, 9 out of 5, and 1 out of 10. So if I can upgrade one of those fives to a 1 of 1, or that would be a thing I'm looking for. And then on Friday, I'm gonna walk around with my Nick Bosa jersey in the modern section and just look for cool Nick Bosa cards. You know.
When you say Friday, we are talking about the Chantilly show.
Oh no, I'm thinking about national.
Oh,
Uh,
Natty, Natty.
yeah, I
Okay, got
think
it,
I think
got it.
Wednesday I'll be locked in on Mays. And if I can't find a 52, I'll probably go to 53, which is a sneaky expensive short
Mm.
print high number. Uh, and then both, there. I want fewer cards, and I
Mhm.
want nicer cards, and I want all my cards to be meaningful. But I also don't want to be like so anal and so like over disciplined and focused that I miss the fun. So if I can keep that fewer and nicer 80% of the time, and then the other 20% of the time I have a little fun and put together a Nick Bosa side PC or work on those supernovas, I feel like I'm building something beautiful and personal. And also, it's nice to have to buy a card every now and then. So 80/20 is just fine in terms of self-discipline.
So all the players you've named, these are Bay Area athletes. For the people who are listening to the audio, you won't be able to see this, but and I really got to do a better job pushing the video component. I really only do this to clip, but I will say you have a beautiful backdrop where you can see the catch on to my left, but your right behind you. I see the Clemente. I see we got to talk about your podcast because you have an
Sure.
awesome idea
Thanks,
and a
man.
theme, but that's right
Yeah.
behind you as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all just, I mean, these are all pieces of art, or like cards being art, where
Wow.
you're curating your own collection that evokes memories for you and makes you feel good, right?
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, there's that adage that I love. In the end, what we collect is ourselves.
Ooh.
And I think that's beautiful. I think that like holding up how we collect and what we collect is a great way to look at who we are, look at our personalities, look how we experience the world. It says so much about who we are, how we collect. Um, we walk around saying, "Who do you collect?" But I'm much more interested in how do you collect, and that's one thing. The other one is that just basic principle of fewer and beautiful. Um, I want ones that have meaning. They don't necessarily have to be the most valuable cards in the world, but they have to all matter to me, and I want them all to fit together. And I don't want that many. I think about the end
Mm.
game as a collector. I don't want to feel like burdened down by my possessions. I want to just be able to feel like a manageable number of beautiful cards is just kind of a thing with me.
Less is more for you. Vintage is your lane. Yet we are great card friends, and here I am, not ultra modern, but modern, more modern.
Yeah.
And you just saw me 3 weeks ago at the Mid Atlantic in Silver Spring, Maryland, which we drove
Yeah.
together to.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
driving again, by the way.
No problem.
Um, but you saw me buy 211 90s from value bins.
It made you
That must
so
have been.
happy though.
It
You were like
did.
you were so
Oh,
happy. That's all I care about. It's not you see you happy, bud.
I still haven't made content about it. I actually don't know how to show. I don't know how to do it. I thought about binders and all this stuff. I'll figure it out, but I'm so behind in like content creation in a good way. I remember really early on when I was like doing the whole Denny's thing, that the Denny's diner was my logo, and you and I were talking about social media, and I was literally just posting a card like one a day, like oh, this is my breakfast card, my ultra modern, I'll post it in the morning, and like
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. You of all people have seen just like this I don't know. I don't know how to explain what the last 8 months have been for me in the hobby, but you have seen me just go through that, and I thank you for being a good sounding board and consigliatore with my crazy thoughts that go through my head about the hobby. It's been so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. It's fun. It's fun to collect. It's nice to have an in-person relationship as well.
Right. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's why we do it. It should be all for fun. I mean,
Yeah.
once you get the money involved and get the fraud involved and the stress, like, I mean, you and I have talked about just we almost got into a scam situation. We were gonna like
Oh
share the
yeah, dude.
we should
Too good to be true.
that's actually why one of the first podcasts I was on, shout out to Reckless Cards, but they had me on because I posted about that scam situation where this guy, the scammer, I'll just say, posted a 86 Fleer BGS 4 and super undervalued, and we ended up just talking about it over like lunch, right? And then
Yeah.
we're like,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
we
yeah.
should go halvesies on the cost and halvesies on the profit if we could flip it. But ultimately we ended up looking up the profile, calling the number on the bio, googling the actual LCS,
Yep.
and realizing, man, this guy was like a level 3 scammer. So
You
pretty
know,
pretty shady.
it's too good to be true. The most
Exactly.
I ever hope for is 15% off.
Right.
Like
Right.
that's a good bargain. If I can get 15% off, I'm real happy in the world of cards.
Right. I mean, it's we talk about, I missed the peak where people were 2xing, 3xing, especially if you're grading cards and grading for flips. But and I guess people still grade for flips if they get tens. But I guess what I'm saying is we so for the people who look at cards as investments, like, to get 10% in the stock market is wonderful. I mean, it's
Right.
great, but
Right.
want more. They want more when they sell.
Totally. So when I got back in, not that long after I got back into collecting is when PSA shut down. First, they
Mhm,
jacked up their prices and then they shut
mhm,
it down. That would have been like
mhm.
Q1 of 21, I think.
Okay.
So anybody who was in then, like, if you didn't have a ton of momentum, it was way too late, right? If
Mm,
you got in at that point, you were spending money. You were the blood in the water. You were the patsy at the table. The people who made
mm,
money were the ones who were like 2018, 2019, 2020 on the way up. So they
mhm.
had inventory to sell. They were trading into larger cards, right? And when they got shut down, right, they were already deep in the black, I would think.
I
But the
see.
people who got in a little bit later, who bought, let's be generous. Let's not say bought at the peak. That's too obvious. Let's say the people who bought like 2020 Q3, Q4 on the way up. And it takes a while to figure out what you're doing. No one comes in cold. I think there are a lot of people who just got really, really hammered
Yeah,
because people were making money right over. People were buying $20 blaster boxes. That's what they used to cost, and then selling them for 80 and $100 for retail garbage. Man, it was
yeah,
insane.
yeah.
So actually, when I got back in, I had a ton of cards from when I was a kid, mostly not that valuable. I'd say between 1 and 5, some 10, some 20, not a ton of really valuable cards.
Mhm.
But like you've talked about, selling cards is still gives you hobby time. And I actually, because there were so many eyeballs, people were buying everything, anything and everything. I sold a ton of cards on eBay and actually built up my original nest egg selling off, I would call them basically commons, a little bit better than
Mhm.
commons, just things that I knew that if I could get the sentimentality out of the way, there was like, okay, if I really want this card of so and so from 1980, I'll just go buy it again. People were buying things they all the way from the ultra modern to the vintage because they just were like in a frenzy. Um, it's not the sell-through rate now is much slower than it was a couple of years ago. Even for a tiny guppy in an ocean like me.
Well, you're a huge fish in my heart, I'll say that. We have talked a lot about eBay selling. You've helped me a lot with understanding how to do it better too. And PWE is, for folks who are maybe not aware, plain white envelope. That wasn't always there, right? I mean, that's a newer thing, and it's 60 cents shipping for like, or like put it in something that you can, for anything under $20.
Yep.
That's where like
Yeah.
I feel like I've thrived
Oh
on the
yeah.
dollar sales.
So many. And like now I don't really do it, but I
Yeah.
certainly did. That's how I built up my nest egg.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. But
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like, with that nest egg, your focus, because it's almost like to use the fish analogy, like I'm trailing behind you because I came in after you did. So I feel like a lot of my knowledge is just like, yeah, in the wake of your, of the water that you're kind of going forward on, I learned from it. So when it comes to less is more, maybe I'll get there. Right now, I'm still more
Yeah.
is more. Everything's more. Like I want everything. I don't even know my lanes. That's why I'm doing this podcast. I'm trying to figure out what I like to do and what I don't like to do. So, but with you and your nest egg and like your investment, uh, well, I almost want to ask, like, do you think cards are investments? But the better question I think would be,
We can talk about that in a little bit.
yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
like, how do you, so you feel good about the hobby now, right? I mean, maybe like you said, you're the person who told me a great quote being, a lot of the losses you take early on, you're learning in the hobby, consider it tuition. Because I remember I would tell you, like, oh my gosh, I like lost money on this card or that card, and you're like, well, did you learn something from it? Did you have fun, or did you enjoy having the card at one point? We would just talk about how these losses make you a better collector in the hobby,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've sold lots of cards for losses. I mean, I remember when I first got in and like cards were super hot and I had no idea what I was doing. And I went on Panini and bought 2 boxes of certified.
Mhm.
So NFL is NBA certified, which is kind of like mid-level hobby. It's not
Okay.
that great.
Okay.
And I bought one hobby box of NFL Limited, I think it's called.
Okay.
Whatever it was. It
Mhm.
all adds up to I lost my ass by the time I could sell them. I sold them, but I had no idea what I was doing. And but it was part of my learning experience. Like, just nothing's that easy.
When you
Um,
say you sold it,
yeah.
you sold a sealed wax or you sold, like, the
Yeah.
cards
No,
from.
I bought them to sell
Okay.
and I sold them, but you know, I had no idea what I was buying, no idea price points, no idea like one brand from another.
Mhm.
I just, trial and error, but stupid. Like that was just a lack of patience. And then finally I'd lost so much, so I ended up opening the last hobby box of basketball, like fourth tier rookie auto, like it was on a sticker, like it was terrible.
Yeah.
But so I listened to a ton of podcasts.
Yes.
I
I was
think
actually
so.
gonna ask about your inspirations.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about that for a second. So
Yeah,
I
let's do it.
listened to a podcast from a whole range of perspectives.
Mhm.
Right. I think that from some of the younger collectors,
Mhm.
imagination, right? Creativity, tons of enthusiasm. There's like youth and vitality. And I love that part of the hobby. I
Yeah.
love that energy, because the vintage side can get dusty and crusty, right?
Yeah.
It can get sort of like boring and staid. Uh, but the other side, those vintage guys have wisdom.
Mhm.
They know what they're doing. They've been around. They've seen trends. They know how to hobby well, right?
Mm.
And so I listen to a lot of different perspectives. I think the ones I really like listening to, I guess they're modern, ultra modern, but I also think the strong modern is crossover, right?
Oh,
Josh
yeah.
and Chris, those guys are really, really smart,
Mhm.
right? Period, paragraph. They are really smart. They Well, they got in, right? They sold their business to collectors. Let's
Mm.
just
Don't
start there.
don't forget Christina, Christina
Oh,
PC.
sorry, Christina's PC. I hope she
She's
gets that. What's that green? What's that card she wants?
Maxi Kleber
Maxi.
or
I'm so
yeah.
rooting for him. Some stranger out there in the ether going, I hope you get your card.
I hope so too. Maybe
Thanks for
you will
remembering.
find
It's
joy.
important. It's
Yes.
important to name her, right?
Yeah,
She's
absolutely.
does a lot of it. Um, they really know their stuff.
Yeah.
They're smart guys. And then there's a few other modern guys. I think Jeremy Lee spans it.
Mhm.
Jeremy Lee knows ultra modern, modern, and vintage. I think he
Mhm.
really knows cards. Uh, and then on the vintage side, there's a lot of guys. A guy named uh, Mike Baseball Collector. He's a super
Mm.
OG YouTuber. Um, there's tons of good vintage, like a bunch of middle-aged white guys, right? I can draw the profile for you,
Mhm.
but they really know cards. And I feel like listening to the whole perspective, um, from all different perspectives, helps me to learn to hobby better.
Mm. I like that. If I had to, like, I don't know if we've talked about this on our walks, but the most ideal collector, like I know what we have talked about, which is the strengths and weaknesses, so to speak, the stereotypical strengths and weaknesses of the typical vintage collector and the modern collector and the ultra modern collector. And I really like what you've said about the patience and the wisdom that vintage collectors have. And I think we've talked about how, is it possible to, like, marry the patience and wisdom of a vintage collector with the ability to move quick that an ultra modern collector may have, because as we know, some vintage collectors, because of maybe too much patience and maybe not enough wisdom, sometimes will just sit on cards. And we know some of the you and I've talked about when we go to these shows, there are these dinosaur dealers who are just set on Beckett. No, nothing against Beckett, but like those book values,
Book
right?
value, like
Book value.
like I would not be saying that out loud in 2023. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, what are you doing? Like a
You
mastodon of book
You
value,
know,
man.
you and I both have a PSA. What is it? The collectors club thing,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
membership.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You and I get the magazine where they amazingly, I did not know this until that first issue came into my house, but
Yeah.
they actually try to put book values, right? About
The
here's
thing the part you can tear out, you mean,
near
in the
the
middle?
end, it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
PSA 10 is this amount, PSA 9 is this amount, and they choose like two or three cards out of every like, the two or three most important cards out of every set going back years and years. But I'm like, I'm looking at this, I'm like, what is going on here?
Seems like filler. I mean, I'd be happy if they just didn't put that in a magazine, save themselves money. It just goes, it's smaller. It comes out, right? I usually
Yeah.
tear that thing out anyway. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know why people sit on cards, and I don't care how much a person has in on a card.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Right.
I'm not paying for your loss. So you can either sell cards
Yeah.
or you can go home, but I'm going to give you real hard-earned cash for a rectangular piece of cardboard. Right? Like
Hmm.
here's a perfect example. Can I show a card?
Yes, but for the
19
audio folks,
Okay, I'll
please
describe it.
paint us the picture.
Absolutely. So this is 1961 Willie Mays PSA 5. Um, I'm not a big fan of the 61 set. It's kind of a plain design, two
Mm,
rectangles on the bottom, one with the name and position, the other one with his team. Just
mm,
kind of a strange portrait shot of Willie. He doesn't have anything recognizable. No hat. You can't even see the Giants on the uniform. Very clean card. If you can see, Denny, that it's got really quite poor centering, right? You can
yeah,
see it's
left
super,
heavy.
exactly, super
Yeah,
heavy on the left and heavy on the bottom.
bottom.
So this
Hmm.
is an example of a car I bought on PWCC, I don't know, a year
Hmm.
ago,
Okay.
16 months ago. And one of those where I was still, looking more at labels more than I should have been. Like, oh, that's a great price for a 5.
Hmm.
I
Oh no, I think we might have lost Dave right when he was about to tell us about the 1961 Maze PSA 5.
Oh, you're back. So I would get rid of this card,
Okay.
right? Um, I am very happy to sell this card at a loss now.
Mm,
Right. I was just thinking I would never be a dealer who would insist on trying to get back for what I pay for. I would rather
hmm.
get liquid, take the loss, get the clutter out of my life, have the
Hmm.
cash to put towards another card
Right.
and live to fight another day. So I've been selling off a lot of cards like that. I'm okay. You pay for the hobby experience.
Yeah.
So I get nothing from holding on a card I don't want. Even if I have to take a small loss, I'm happy to do it just to keep moving. Now, that's different than being patient.
Mm,
If you have a good card that you believe in, hold it. Right? Especially if you love the card, why would
right.
you don't have to sell at a loss? But if you have no attachment to the card, if you don't like the example, keep moving.
I almost feel like we're renting cards sometimes, and it's like the
Yeah.
longer you hold it, it's like
Yeah.
the fines accrue, and you're like, all right, well, I got to pay the fine, return the book. But if I love the author, if I love the book, I'm gonna buy the book and I'm gonna keep it
Totally.
forever. Oh,
Totally.
yeah. But
Totally.
you know what's so funny about that card, though? Again, I know it's not in your PC and you're willing to let it go,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it almost, if you could show it to the
Sure.
video audience. So
Yeah.
I just want to say about this card to the audio folks. The rated rabbi is definitely correct. So there's no hat. You can't see his jersey below his collar. It does look pretty plain. Like there's nothing that jumps out at me. It almost looks to me like it looks like Stephen Curry's rookie card that I recently posted about how it looks unlicensed.
It's
Like
funny. I
that
was just
card
saying.
looks like an unlicensed
It
maze to
could be
me.
a Panini.
Yeah.
I wouldn't buy Panini baseball. I wouldn't take free Panini baseball. Yeah, man. I don't know. I know some people don't care about that, but I just like I don't. They got no hat, no uniform.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I've seen some of your vintage cards, and they again, we can talk a little bit about the grading, the eye appeal before we move on to maybe like the
yeah,
parenting and the hobby stuff. But
sure, sure.
um, you and I have talked a lot about grading companies, grades. You and I, like, I graded my first card with you, which is the Kobe card that I've posted about really early on in my journey. Um, when it comes to eye appeal, I mean, you and I have definitely talked about how when you look the first thing you immediately look at in a card is like the eyes, right? The face of the player, right? And how,
Yeah.
and you just mentioned like the center, and usually some cards have it at the center. Sometimes maybe it's a little bit above the center, maybe the torso is in the center. But I mean, tell me, help maybe more, because I know you and I have talked about it, but like, help the listeners uh understand more about, and it is very subjective. Let's just get that
Mhm.
off the bat. Eye appeal
Mhm.
is such,
Mhm.
such a subjective thing. But what are you looking at for vintage eye appeal?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Um, so the first thing I am looking at is the the surface and the registration,
Mm,
right? So what does the card look like? To my eyes? How is the color? Is it bright and
sure.
vibrant,
Mm,
right? Is it clear?
mm-hmm,
Is it crisp? That's the first thing I'm looking at. But not far behind is the centering. Um, there's something about an off-centered card that makes me like a little like, I don't know, like ill at ease, right? There's something about it that just doesn't sit right with me. So the second thing I'm
mm-hmm,
looking for is centering. Now I'll settle for not a perfectly centered card if it's a gorgeous card and it's the card that I can afford. But
mm-hmm,
I'm less likely to go for. I have to really love a card. That's the first thing with vintage. Is this a beautiful card?
mm-hmm,
Is this a beautiful card? If it's not a beautiful card, I'm not going to love it. So those are the first things I'm looking for. What's the quality of the image, and how is the centering? I don't care about edges, and I really don't care about corners. I really don't. My eyes don't stay there. My eyes go to the centering and the image that's I'm looking at. I think that's a lot of people. There's nothing revolutionary about the way I collect. What I'm curious about, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Denny. I know you're not a vintage guy, but just to speculate. So
mm-hmm,
we've been talking vintage, and we've been, in my mind, we've been talking lower grade, high eye appeal. Okay, because right, just a technical grade, so it can have banged up corners and rough edges, and be like a PSA 3, let's say, for a vintage card, but be gorgeous because it's centered and has a really nice image. Technical
mm-hmm,
grade.
mm-hmm,
What about a card that has like a mid-level technical grade,
mm-hmm,
but is ugly, right? The grade, 'cause that's just a number. What is the
mm-hmm,
future? Actually, a good example would actually be this 61 May is how off center it is.
mm-hmm.
So what is the future of cards that are, mid grade, low eye appeal? Who's gonna buy those? Will they just sit? Will they be severely discounted? I would love to know what you think.
Wow, I mean, that's a great question. I am wholly unqualified to answer that, much like, but I'm also wholly unqualified to have a podcast, be a breaker. So it hasn't stopped me. So I'll give my complete layman's answer to that, which is, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, to the technical grade, the subjectivity of what eye appeal can be. I know PWCC does try to categorize it and label things as high eye appeal, but I think cost will be a big thing. Again, like I have a PSA 7 Michael Jordan scoring king because that's what I could afford. I didn't,
Yeah.
or I mean, I guess I could afford more, but I would rather have that and 211 refractor cards, I guess, or $211 cards. Um, but I think that there's a card for everyone, and there's a everyone for a card. I don't even know what I meant by that, but any card can be loved. That card you sell to someone, that may be their most expensive card, or
That's true.
if they're really newer.
That's
So I
true.
don't know. Like for me, I'm I'm not trying to like change the subject, but I
Yeah.
lament I am gonna be so sad when 90s cards are gonna be considered vintage. I don't know how soon that's gonna be, but man, it's gonna like really hit me.
Yeah, man, you're getting old like the rest of
Yeah,
us.
yeah. Well, can I ask you one thing
Sure.
about,
Anything.
yes, I mean we we talk every week. With the kids out of school now, we're gonna have to find ways to go on the walks because usually it's after they get on the bus and all this stuff. But I love this. This is like the most. I have no notes. This is just us talking. I do remember though, and I'm taking
Yeah.
notes. I'm like time stamping things where I'm like, I want to clip him saying this. This I think I'm gonna clip. So I want you to just talk about it. I've
Okay.
heard nowhere else. This is we're like minute 55 in the raw interview, but I'll do an intro and all that stuff. You came up with an awesome term, and I want you to talk about it for the enjoyment and pleasure and education of our listeners, which is nightstand cards. Like,
Oh,
go.
yeah.
Just please
Oh,
tell
yeah.
please tell me
That's funny.
tell us about the concept of
Yeah.
nightstand cards.
All right, I can do better.